Good evening. I'm live again, and is it Sunday evening or Monday morning? Actually, it's just about Monday morning. It's 12:03 a.m. Canadian time, and so I have gone live. I've gone live. I'm in the office, and I'm basically preparing for the week. I try to come into the office one day during the weekend and prepare for the week. Um, I'm going to be talking about a lot of stuff. The U.S. Presidential dispensation. York Region District School Board court this week. Pro bono work. And other stuff that come to mind. So I'm gonna have an ambitious agenda of things that I want to talk about, and I've put the list up, and so I mean we all watched the inauguration this week, and quite frankly, the inauguration was something else. I mean, Donald Trump's speech just had me like, wow. I mean, Donald Trump is certainly, while he's a billionaire, while he is part of the establishment, in some ways he's not the establishment. He has a certain disdain for them, and you can see it in how he interacts with established bureaucrats. He has very little respect for career politicians, and so it will be interesting to see how Donald Trump gets along with Congress, gets along with the House of Representatives and the Senate to get his agenda through, um, so that his legislative agenda could pass and so that his nominees could be appointed. He has hundreds, thousands actually, of judicial positions to fill across the United States, and so his role and his relationships will be important. Yesterday, well, not yesterday, but this week, I believe it was Wednesday or Thursday, the the York Region District School Board posted on their webpage an apology from one of their trustees for calling a parent of a black student who was subject to discrimination in their schools and called nigger. They posted an apology from Nancy Elgie. Nancy Elgie apologized and then said that her excuse for calling the black parent a nigger was quite interesting. I was the person on this same Facebook Live that broke the story about Nancy Elgie calling that black parent a nigger. It was my Facebook Live that first broke that story. And then it was picked up by the Toronto Star and all the media because people were afraid to publish it. And so I said I will go public with it on my live. Right? She had called a woman a nigger in front of a whole bunch of school administrators. And this is what she had said, which is why she should be fired. At the time the allegation was made public, on December 8th of 2016. This is what she said. There is no merit to the accusation, but I will cooperate fully in the investigation. And when she was asked if she was denying having uttered the slur, she responded, I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just saying there's no merit to the accusation. Right? That was what her position was at the time. And so the Toronto Star did a story on January 20th, and she was quoted. And this is what she said. She said, there's no excuse for what I said, which is calling the parent a nigger. Only the explanation that I was clumsily trying to refer to your concerns as reported in the media, not to you personally. As soon as my brain registered what I had said, I was overcome with shock and dismay. I felt heartsick and deeply ashamed to have said something so hurtful, even unintentionally, and so foreign to the values I held throughout my entire life. It is sickening to me that I could have reinforced the systemic racism that so many have experienced in this society. Right? That's what she's saying now in January 2017. The problem that I have, and I was quoted in the same story in the Toronto Star, is I said that I'm deeply disappointed that it took so long for her to issue an apology. Why was it not issued earlier? And then in respect to the equity training that she said that she will take, I said that the equity training at the York Region District School Board is akin to a fly landing on a buffalo. It has little to no effect. What is needed is training in how not to be racist and to unpack the racism that is rampant in the school board. I mean, that is exactly what it is. You have a school board where the director of education, Mr. Parapinelli, basically has sidelined the senior superintendent for equity. And when the man brought up issues of anti-black racism, tried to intimidate him, was yelling, screaming, and shaking when he was talking to Mr. Roach in a meeting filled with other administrators, trying to intimidate the man so that these issues that plague the York District School Board is certainly facilitated by him and those trustees. Him and those trustees who one of whom was caught in public making calling the same parent a nigger. I can't wait. In April, I will have the opportunity to cross-examine them at a hearing. And I can't wait, because if the school board, I'm going to do a hearing in April, and if the school board don't call them as witnesses, I will subpoena them. I will subpoena them because they're going to have to account for the racism in that school board. And so I will compel them to attend, and I will examine them, but the examination will be quite strident. I will apply for them to be hostile witnesses so that I can cross-examine them on the bad behavior that they're facilitating in that school board. The bad behavior that they're facilitating in the school board is a serious public interest issue, because you have students, vulnerable students, who are at risk. Vulnerable students are at risk because of what is being tolerated in that school board. I mean, if you're saying that racism is acceptable within that school board, and you are saying it by your sort of ignoring what is happening to students, then you need to be held to account for that racism. And I think that I would be right to bring them before the Human Rights Tribunal and get their evidence under oath. But outside of that, that trustee needs to be removed. That trustee needs to be removed from her position. By her conduct, she has shown that she's incapable of fulfilling that role as a trustee that acts in the public interest. Now let's talk about the Loku Inquest. So the Loku Inquest, this is Andrew Loku, a man who was shot and killed by Toronto police in Toronto in a building run by the Canadian Mental Health Association. His inquest, well, his pre-inquest begins this week. So I'm one of the lawyers in a battery of lawyers who are attending that that conference, that pre-hearing conference this week. So we are trying to say that, well, the way I framed the inquest is I said that you have to look at the intersectionality of issues. So the position that I'm arguing on behalf of my client at that inquest, that the jury must hear about intersectional issues of race, mental health, and substance abuse. So where you have a combination of a black person who is mentally ill and has been drinking or smoking and is in a crisis, right? How can the police act so as to preserve life? How can the police act so that less lethal force is used, or less than lethal force? And there are things the police can do. There's a number of things the police can do where someone is in crisis, has been using substances, and has a knife in their possession. Certainly the police can contain the area, can render the area safe, and can call in a specialized team to deal with that person. I mean, one of the simplest things they can do is the same net that people use to catch fish, like a fish net. You have officers engaging the men, and then you have officers creeping up behind and throwing that net over that person. But if you throw a net over a person, and the net has the same the net is made in such a way that it allows you not to have a knife penetrate it. So it's almost like the bullet, not a bulletproof vest, but a knife-proof vest. So it's a knife-proof net, right? So you can't cut through the net with a knife. You throw that over the person, and you ground the person. That is one way to. That is one of the most effective way to deal with a person who has a knife and has a mental illness and is in substance abuse and could be a risk of harm to others or to himself. That's one way you can bring that person down. So, I mean, there are ways that the police can operate, and we're not trying to sit as armchair quarterbacks to how the police do their jobs, but we want the police to do their jobs in an effective way, in a way that preserves life and not take lives. And so that will be part of what I will be advocating at that inquest. I will certainly question the police officer about the lethal force that they use, but I'm more concerned at this point because Andrew Loku cannot be brought back to life. I'm more concerned right now about what we can do to preserve life in the future. So that will be what my mandate will be at the inquest that is coming up very shortly. Last week I got a lot of calls from people who were telling me a lot of interesting cases are going on in the courts right now, but they're self-represented. These people can't afford lawyers. And I recently did a big pro bono case. Well, two of them. Two big cases I did pro bono, $50,000 each of work for free or little to nothing. I haven't been paid. And it's very taxing on the sole practitioner's resources. So somebody just came to me with a very good case, but I refused it because how many pro bono cases I can do a year? I can't be in business if I take on all these cases pro bono. People have to find ways to raise money to pay for a lawyer. Alternatively, we're paying, for example, if you're talking about anti-black racism, we're giving the African Canadian Legal Clinic hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to litigate these cases on behalf of African Canadians where there's anti-black racism. So people ought to go to the African Canadian Legal Clinic and get them to work, to do what public funding is being given to them to do, to litigate these cases, right? You can't come to a sole practitioner and expect that sole practitioner who doesn't even know you to be dedicating his time, his effort, and his energy to do your case. That sole practitioner has to eat. That sole practitioner has to pay for their overhead, pay for their office, pay for stationery, supplies, staff, everything else. So, you know, sometimes I think people are totally out of touch with the reality of a sole practitioner. A sole practitioner has to run a business as well as practice law. Otherwise, that sole practitioner ends up practicing law from a coffee shop because they can't afford an office like what I have. You know, you can't afford to be where you're supposed to be because you have a lot of uncollected receivables, or you're practicing law but not managing a business. And so there is a fine balance that one has to maintain, and one has to always keep that in perspective, that one is running a business and the business is practicing law. And so that, yes, I will do pro bono cases, I will do the appropriate pro bono cases, but I expect clients to come up with some ways. If you're trying to engage me as a lawyer to deal with your case, I expect clients to come up with some way to assist in funding their case, or at least funding the disbursements. You know, don't expect me to go into my pocket to pay your disbursements and to also forego any payment to do the case. It doesn't really work well that way. It doesn't work well because, you know, you as the client end up having no investment in your case, because all you're doing is you're just depending on a lawyer to work, to put in the intellectual energy to do the case, and you have nothing invested except that you want to win. You want to win, but you contribute nothing. And interestingly enough, those are the clients that don't really say thank you. They don't really say thank you, and they have no appreciation for what you do, because, you know, it's easy for them. They didn't have to go into their pockets, or they don't have to write the legal briefs, or they don't have to study the costs of filing materials or hiring support staff to do what needs to be done. So that is that is not nice. That is not nice. So clients need to, especially clients who receive pro bono legal services, they need to figure out a way sometimes to show their lawyer that they appreciate the lawyer's effort. Even buying a coffee for the lawyer. Even buying a coffee for the lawyer. Coffee may cost $1.50. But you show up with a coffee and a bagel at your lawyer's office, that's not expensive. That's the least you can do. But it shows that you appreciate the lawyer, you appreciate the lawyer's effort, and you give a hell about your lawyer. And that lawyer will go out of their way for you because you have indicated by your actions that you in some way care about your lawyer. You know, the other day I had a client, the other day I lost a case. I lost a case because the judge asked the client a question in court. And the answer that the client gave was totally contradictory to what the client swore in his affidavit. And so the judges were inclined to dismiss the case and dismissed it. After the judges dismissed the case, I was met with so much hostility. I was met with so much hostility from the client that I actually left my stuff in the courtroom because I'm one of the lawyers that was trained in the court, and so I understand what security and safety is all about. I left all my stuff in the courtroom and just went to the registrar's office. I went to the registrar's office, told the registrar what was going on, and the registrar sent security up to get all my stuff. So I wasn't concerned about my belongings at the time. I was concerned about retreating from the area of hostility so that that person who was hostile could calm down, and it didn't become a situation that I just spoke about. I just spoke about the local situation and de-escalation. So I de-escalated when the client became very aggressive and hostile in front of other lawyers too, in front of lawyers for the opposite side. They were all there, so you could imagine how embarrassing that is to me, how humiliating that is to me to have a client lose a case, and instead of focusing on the merits of the loss, being aggressive with a lawyer. So I left and I went down to the registrars. But a case like that, you can't. That client has basically severed any solicitor-client relationship forever, because you can't, well, at least not me, I can't turn around and say I'm going to represent that client in the future at all. I can't say that. Any goodwill is lost. Any goodwill is completely lost. So I didn't get any comments on this live. 0 comments, so I'm gonna end it. Ending the live.